Wow, it sure has been a big week. We had the Fed meeting, Sam Bankman-Fried had some of his charges dropped, and we even had another bank collapsing, but nobody seemed to care and the market continues to explode sideways. But before we get into that, I just want to go over this video from Brad Schumann because he had some choice words to say about crypto.
All the money, power, PACs, and lobbying is on their side, for they have made nearly $2 trillion they make money by literally making money. Yes, it is true the United States also makes money by printing money. That benefit goes to the American people when we provide more services or when we tax them less.
Actually, them printing money is a tax. It's taxation without representation, and it's a tax on the value of your dollar every single day. They print all of this money and they just say that it makes them be able to tax us less, but that's just a sham. And the reason why they're afraid of cryptocurrency is because they're afraid that you're going to take the power back and they're not going to be able to just print money like that anymore. But let's continue.
And reflect on the fact that I don't believe that Satoshi Nakamoto was innovative.
The whole internet has been roasting this guy for calling it Satoshi Nakamoto, and it's pretty ridiculous that one of the biggest anti-crypto representatives doesn't even know who created Bitcoin in the first place. And in my opinion, Brad Schumann here is just a clown, and this just goes to show you how much these politicians know about cryptocurrency. In other news, FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried will no longer face campaign finance charges at an October criminal trial, federal prosecutors say, citing a decision by the Bahamian authorities to reject a count in the indictment that was not listed on the warrant against him when he was extradited to the United States in December. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not surprised that he's getting these charges dropped because obviously he did donate a bunch of money to the Democratic Party, and this is pretty much the reason why he did that, is just so he could cover his ass and he wouldn't get criminally charged for all of the corruption that he was involved in. So they figured out some kind of loophole, and now these authorities have rejected the count on the indictment, and it looks like this sleazeball is just a little bit closer to wiggling his way out of trouble. But honestly, that's why we all have cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, is so that we can escape this traditional system that is so corrupt. And yet again, this is just another reason why not to use centralized exchanges, because they're just going to rob you for all of your money and give it straight to the politicians that we're trying to take the power from. And if you think he's going to just get out of that one charge, you just wait, because he's working on the rest. According to this article, Sam Bankman-Fried wants to seal Caroline Ellison's diary. Obviously, there's some incriminating evidence in there, and they don't want us to see the kind of commingling that they were bragging about to themselves in their diaries. And this could be one of the most important pieces of evidence that they're trying to get locked away to prevent them from being locked away. Yesterday, right after the Fed meeting, it did look like we were starting to see a little bit of a pump, and it looked like Bitcoin might actually break out and start heading back for another higher high. And in my opinion, whenever the Fed said this, it was really bullish.
Certainly hold policy at a restricted levels for some time, and we need to be prepared to raise further if we think that's appropriate.
In my opinion, he basically just said that they are going to continue with the pause, and this is going to be the last interest rate hike that they anticipate, but that they're still going to be nimble, and if they need to actually go forward and do another interest rate hike, if like inflation starts to resurge again, then they will hold that option open and then take that option if they need to. But for right now, it looks like they're starting to see the data come in how they want it to, and they might actually be able to stop with the interest rate hikes and then start looking forward to a pivot in hopefully the beginning of next year. Really, in my opinion, that was all that we needed to know, but the market always looks into things obviously deeper, and he did say that they're not going to do a pivot until next year. And he said that they might actually have to do another interest rate hike, so of course that scared the market. And now we've started to see Bitcoin and the rest of the market just kind of have a little bit of a retracement, but we haven't made any lower lows here, so I'm not sketched out at all. Like I've been saying, I think we're just trapped in the middle range where we're going to be going sideways until pretty much right before the halvening, and then we might start to go parabolic. But right now it's going to be representing the best opportunity to get in closest possible to the bottom while knowing that we've probably already seen the lows. And by the time things start to explode back to the upside, most of the gains are going to be had already, and it might be too late to make life-changing wealth. For now, though, it seems like the market is still uncertain, and we still do have 2 more CPI readings until the next Fed meeting. And I think those data points are going to play in really heavily to see if we're actually going to see the Fed continue with the pause or if they're going to have to do another interest rate hike by the end of the year. And in other good news, we got the PCE price index coming down to 4.1% actual as compared to the 4.2% expectations and the 4.6% previous. This is really good because this is one of those leading indicators for inflation, and the closer this gets to 2%, the closer we're going to be to the eventual Fed's target inflation rate of 2%, and the closer we're going to be to a pivot. And other seemingly recurring news, Pacific West has finally collapsed again, I guess. And this time it looks like it's official because they have agreed to combine with Bank of California or Bank of California. And it looks like the Bank of California is probably going to get bonked on the head for this because they're obviously a way smaller bank than Pacific West. And it looks like no larger banks wanted to buy this. So maybe they're going to be making a mistake here and they might be the next ones to collapse when they get bonked. Either way, nobody's really paying attention to this, and as the banks continue to struggle, I think we're going to see the effects of that coming up here soon, especially as these long and variable effects of the interest rate hikes continue to work their way through the economy. And these are just signs of the looming banking or other economic catastrophe that's going to lead to the pivot. And the more things we start to see like this, the closer we are to that eventual outcome. All of this is seemingly good news, but you wouldn't know it looking at the chart because we are still stuck at pretty much $29,500. And while this is really boring, let's look at the chart and see how close we might actually be to a parabolic pump. If we go back to the very beginning of Bitcoin and the very first bull market, you can see that between the beginning of the parabolic pump and the beginning of the next parabolic pump and the next bull market, there was about 90 weeks from pump to pump. And while the very first bull market might be a kind of a rough indicator because there wasn't very much data before that, let's just go forward and see what kind of a gap we have between the next two parabolic moves. It's kind of subjective here to decide at which point we actually started to go parabolic, but roughly I would say there's about 168 weeks in between these two parabolic movements. Now we seem to have a little bit better data because there's a lot more history here, and I think that these data points might start to become a little bit more consistent. Looking here at the distance between the next two parabolic movements, you can see that we have another pretty much 168 weeks, and now it looks like we might be starting to come into a pattern. But still, there hasn't been that many cycles, and it is hard to tell. But if the last two bull markets are anything to go by, you can see that right now we're at about 157 weeks, which could mean that we have about 10 to 11 more weeks to go before we start actually going parabolic. In the meantime, though, you can see that usually right before we do go parabolic, we have a little bit of a retracement here, and that could be what's going on right now with the Bitcoin price starting to go sideways and maybe even starting to have some kind of retracement. So maybe we will see Bitcoin come back down here, and it could even come back down to the next moving average, which would be the 200-day moving average at about $27 almost $1,000 here, it looks like. And as long as we don't make a lower low, I'm really not going to be nervous at all. And I think we're getting pretty close to whenever Bitcoin and the rest of the market are going to start rising again. Let me know in the comments, do you think this is just a time that's boring before we get roaring, or are we about to dip before we rip? Either way, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. This is Ibisu. He's named after one of the 7 lucky gods of Japan. According to legend, he will bring wealth and prosperity to anybody who evokes his name. So don't forget to write his name in the comments, or you'll bring dishonor to your whole portfolio. And check out this video right here. Say goodbye, Ibisu.